Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo mishmash. This one being broadcast live March 10th, 2021. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to us. This is going to be a fun show. Well, we've got to talk about the new announcement for the Nikon Z9. It looks like an epic camera. We only have a little bit of details, but chat room, welcome you guys. And I really want to know what you think the price of this camera is going to be. You can wait till we start to discuss the ins and outs. I'm really glad that we are joined by my good friends, and one of them being David Carr today, who is a Nikon photographer and is probably anticipating this camera.
Yeah, it's weird. I was thinking last night because I knew it was on the horizon, but it's weird when you know it's on the horizon, but then when it's actually kind of announced, and it was sort of a soft announcement because obviously there's not much detail to go on, but it was still kind of like, it kind of just feels real. Like, okay, cool. Now we know it's actually going to happen. Nikon's not just, they seem to be behind lately the last few years, but as long as they catch up with something great, I'm good.
Cool. Yep. And I'm welcoming back to the show Steve Scurich, who actually I saw fairly recently in a much snowier landscape. Steve, how you doing?
I'm great. Man, that week was like therapy for my soul after a year away. I've told this audience before, but that was my first tour back. I did that tour 1 year ago, was the last tour I did. And so, man, I couldn't think of a better way to get back into the swing of doing tours and teaching and everything else. So nice to be back. Really great to have some photographs to work on that aren't real estate photographs, which, I mean, that's my bread and butter, but it's very inspiring and it feels great. So happy to be here.
Nice. So as I said, we'll talk about that Z9. The title of the show is Most Fun Toy/Tool Ever. Again, if you followed this channel in the last couple of days or my Instagram, you probably know what I'm about to talk about, but I want to share a little bit more of my updated thoughts on this thing, which is sitting on the desk just out of sight. Yeah, I'm patting it right now. And, at the other end of the Nikon spectrum, I've got the Z5 on loan to me, which is their budget full frame camera. And I tell you what, this ticks a lot of boxes. This is cool. A really nice camera. And when you put it up against kind of a similar price point of the Canon RP, geez, I think the Nikon really comes out on top with that. We also have to talk about NFT, non-fungible tangibles, and how they are connected to selling your work. I'll be talking out of my butt for about half of that segment because I just barely understand it. Just barely. But that's never stopped me, at least, from talking about things.
I was just about to say
it. Yeah. And I don't know what else we have to talk about. I'm sure I put some other things in the rundown. That link is right down below. Actually, I just linked the stories today, right down below this video. And of course, we'll be reviewing pen members, your photos that you submitted for a little kind of review and edit session as well that we really enjoy doing. And if you're watching this and you're not a pen member, photorec.tv/pen is the best place to find out more. It's a fantastic community with tons of great content for becoming a better photographer. Including what David McKay launched this past week, and that is kind of a subset of pen, helping people really take their photography to the next level. The goal is to help people through the PPA competition. That's photographers. What is it? PPA.
Professional Photographers of America.
Thank you. Professional Photographers of America. Their district competition and their international competition. And, people can have different opinions about whether or not you should, create photographs for the purpose of submitting them for competition. But really, the feedback that you get as being part of this group and also submitting to competition is a fantastic way to grow. There's no arguing that. So I'm really excited for this group of people that have jumped in for that, and just the amount of growth we've seen across photographers in our community in general is just really awesome. Yeah. And many of the chat room, you are a pen member. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And Roy, how you doing, Roy? Roy is in the chat. He's collecting questions. If you have them, stick a little Q. That's a Q. In case you didn't know what it looked like. I'm rusty. I'm sorry. Stick a little Q in front of it and put it in chat, and he will collect those. And if we don't answer them as we're just going along, as we often do, we'll make sure we do a little rapid fire answering at the end of the show. Okay. David Carr, I haven't seen you for a while. What have you been up to? Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Oh man, I've done quite a bit of sports photos for the school that my boys go to, just some basketball teams and things like that. I've mentioned I'm working at this art gallery, kind of as a part-time thing, and I've been working a lot there. We've had a lot of stuff happening. It's amazing how well the art business is doing right now. So I've kind of been pitching in a little extra there, but I did a headshot session this morning, and I did some senior photos last weekend, and got a pretty exciting opportunity coming up soon with a prosthetics company that is hiring me to photograph a young girl who actually goes to the school my boys go to, and she just received a prosthetic arm from this company, and I'm going to be photographing and doing a few video clips for them, kind of featuring her and her story a little bit. So I'm super excited about that.
Very cool.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. I'm really. It was so flattering because I photographed her for the school photos this year, or back in the fall, and she's just the sweetest girl and just has the most amazing outlook on life, and even with this, somewhat disability, she's just got such a great personality and outlook. And when I was asked by her family to be the photographer for this, I was just so honored. So it's really cool. Yeah.
Very cool. Nice. Yeah. And we messaged right before the show. One of the things that we've checked in with you from time to time this year, you have been experimenting with Capture One.
Yes.
And it seemed like last time you were on the show, you were really kind of feeling like your comfort level with Lightroom and those shortcuts and the way it worked for you was pulling you back a little bit. Where are you now?
Well, so I've got this subscription. I mean, I did go ahead and pay for a 1-year subscription to Capture One. And I love when I'm in Capture One, I love the interface and all the feel of it, and the photos look awesome coming through it. But I found myself so held back when the rubber really met the road and I needed to like dive in deep to some editing. I just felt like it was a lot of moving the mouse around and trying to find this. And I realized part of that's just getting used to software. But I'm pretty familiar with what to do in Capture One. It's just that I can't do it as quickly because I don't have shortcuts, and there's some workflow things that just aren't there. And they just released a new edition, a new update to it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that was missing up until yesterday was brush presets, which is a pretty big thing for me. I don't know about you guys, but if I'm editing a portrait or something and I want to work on the irises of the eyes or whiten the teeth, I go to a brush preset in Lightroom, teeth whitening, and bang. And in Capture One, up until yesterday, you had to create a whole new layer and then go. It just, it's more like working in Photoshop, which is awesome, except I just got used to just quickly going to the things I needed to. So it's not a diss on Capture One. I think they're moving in a really great direction. But I'm kind of on pause. I kind of took everything out of that catalog and it wasn't a whole lot, thankfully, because we're still kind of in the beginning of the year. I took everything out of that catalog, loaded it into Lightroom. Even with the edits I had done, I just kind of saved JPEGs. And, I'm going to keep going back to it from time to time, messing around. But Lightroom, ironically, has been working really beautifully for me lately. So I don't know what to think of it, but it's been flying along fast. So I'm like, okay, well.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. Maybe it isn't the machine, but sitting to my right is the MacBook Air that I picked up, about 2.5 months ago now.
Right.
Steve, you and I basically ran a Lightroom image review session, teaching session off this at the end of our Yellowstone workshop.
It was super snappy.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's very smooth. Now, because of technical issues with my camera today, I'm not on the MacBook. I don't know. It just, the camera would freeze every once in a while. So I'm back over on my older iMac, and let's see if I end up cursing Lightroom today. But in general, I've been very happy. Although I will say, so I can, kind of pick up the MacBook Air and move it over here now, since it's not in dongle hell like it usually is to run the show.
Right.
I will say that last night, I got in for review this OWC SSD. This is a 2 terabyte. It's so fast. Oh my God, it's fast. So it's like 2,800 megabytes a second transfer speed. Whereas my typical little Lacy, when I have it
pretty
plugged
amazing.
in, this is about 300.
Yeah.
2,800.
Who makes that?
100. This is OWC. What does that stand for? Other World Computing? Or
yeah,
something?
I think it is other. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But here's what pissed me off. I'll say it. With my MacBook, I've been trying to find the perfect dongle because you only have on the Air. I went cheap and got the Air, and I only have 2 ports. So I plug this in, and I have a few more. These aren't compatible. It says no, won't do it. So I had another one in hand. Nope, wouldn't do it. So I had a third one. I have 3 dongles around the house right now because one of them I used with the Dell prior. Nope, none of them. This has to be plugged in directly to get that speed. And then when you think, okay, sure. So you plug this in directly and you have your power. But what about when you want to import from your camera? There's no SD card slot. So then I was like, gosh. And Chris was like, should you have gotten the Pro with a couple more ports? And I was like, there's so much more money.
Does the Pro have more? I was looking at it the other day, just kind of wondering what it has.
Actually, you know what? I'm not sure if even with the M1.
Okay.
Does it still with the M1?
Yeah, it has more. I can't remember exactly how many, but and I don't remember if this is the newest M1 Pro or what's rumored to come out. Apparently, they are gonna bring a lot of ports back to the Pro and make it actually Pro.
That's good.
And there's even a rumor of an SD card slot making its way back to the Pro, which would be great. I'd be kind of surprised if Apple did that, but just giving us more Thunderbolt ports would be huge.
Well, I was playing around with, I have my old MacBook Pro. It's a 13-inch, like from 2016 or 2015 or something like that. Oh no, it's got to be 2015, 2014. Anyway, it was before they had the touch bar thing and all that. And my son's using it for some recording stuff. And I was working on it today, kind of helping him clean up a few things. And I was like, oh my gosh, SD card slot, HDMI port, multiple USBs, MagSafe adapter, I was like, Apple, come on. I mean, I get it. Like you try to streamline, but I don't get it when it like completely hinders a workflow like you're trying to do, Toby. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. And they've been talking about bringing an HDMI port back. And MagSafe is coming back too, supposedly.
Good. That is so brilliant.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about breaking the end of the cable off if somebody trips over your cord or,
Yeah. And they're going to do away with the touch bar. That never really quite.
Yeah, it's kind of gimmicky.
I don't think there's much love lost there.
Yeah. I'm actually you could still buy the Intel MacBook Pros, but in the M1 chip MacBook Pros, I'm not seeing more than 2 ports.
Okay, so that must be a rumor then, which I follow Apple Insider and stuff like that pretty closely. So I think there was a lot of talk about that. I'm going back a month or 2.
Yeah.
So I can't remember the details, but.
Well, it's like I've always said, Apple would get rid of the screen if they could. They would. Then they would they'd raise the price and tell you how amazing it is.
I think what they're finally realizing though is the actual pros, the people that actually use these machines, like the Mac Pro.
Yeah.
They don't want this little garbage can thing that cools a certain way and stuff. They just want something that it's expandable. Yes. And they can access it and keep it for years to come. So they kind of answered that, and it sounds like they're going to do that with the new MacBook Pro when that's introduced, and then we'll see what they do with the iMac.
Yeah,
that's probably going to be more of a fall thing. But man, I can't wait for that. They just announced. I'm really sorry, David Carr. But they just announced that they are no longer selling the iMac Pro.
Oh, did they? Wow. Okay.
Which was always kind of a stopgap anyway. It sort of held people over until the Mac Pro came out.
Yeah, but, it was. I mean, it's never a good time to buy a computer. So I just bought it and it was like, I'm going to get as much life as I can out of it. And I will say with Lightroom, just going back to that for a second, there's always that question of whether you should run your graphics card or not with Lightroom. I think I had my graphics card turned off completely for a while. Mm-hmm. And then I just decided let me just see what happens if I put the graphics card on. I don't know. And it seemed like that's when it really sped up for me. Like zooming, it just zooms when I zoom instead of doing this like staggered thing, so.
Well, I guess the thing is the M1X chip, I think, which will be the next one, is the benchmarks are rumored to just be crazy, putting pretty much the iMac Pro to shame. And so you can't introduce like your new M1X iMac as a base model and have it just screaming past an iMac Pro. So
Right, exactly. No, I figured they were going to be on their way out with the pros. So
yeah. It's going to be a great machine though. But hopefully they start bringing a lot of these ports and stuff back, because I think people are just like, okay, enough is enough. We're tired of all the cords and the dongles and things just not working. It's one thing to do it with your cell phone, right? Because you're not cording that thing to a bunch of different peripherals all day long. But your computer's a whole different ball game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. So OWC sells a dock, but it's not a travel friendly dock. It needs its own power, and it's incredibly fast, but it's $150. And so So that's the first moment where I've been quite frustrated though with saying just 2 ports. Otherwise, again, still very, very happy with this machine.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, let's dive into a really fun part of the show. These are pen members who have submitted images for us to take a few moments and look at and give you some feedback on. A couple of you have submitted more than one. We're going to hold it to just one because I need to keep the show at a reasonable hour. We're celebrating my daughter's 18th birthday tonight. And I'll just say this real quick. Anybody watching the show, I think you have no doubt about this, but the power of photos and photography for capturing memories. Last night, Fiona and I sat on the couch and went back through Google Photos under her name and basically looked at 18 years of pictures. And wow. It was just really, really fun. We laughed, a little teary here and there, And then there's actually a couple of videos thrown in when she was really little. And of course, those are really fun because she doesn't remember exactly what she was like at that age. But then to hear her own little voice, and I'll just say, I think most parents know this, but maybe parents of younger kids, you don't quite realize this. It just goes so fast sometimes. I know when you're in the thick of it, you're like, oh my God, they're crying themselves to sleep every night. How am I going to survive this? That's how I was for like a period of time.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden she's 18 years old.
That's amazing. Well, happy birthday to her and congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. So, yes. So with that said, let's dive into this part of the show where we talk a little bit about some of our images that you all submitted, and give you some feedback on these images as well. Yeah, let's see. Let's go full screen. I don't think we need to be on the side there.
Sure.
Okay. And let's bring this down a little bit here as well. First up is we've got Jody Reese's Horseshoe Bend.
Wow, that's an interesting angle.
Really
what
is.
I love about this is everybody's seen Horseshoe Bend, at least in the photography world. And it's iconic. It's awesome. It's amazing. But we've always seen the same shot, super wide angle, right on the edge, get the whole thing. And, shooting it this way is a great take on the scene. I love it. It's that rock on the right side, though, is really, really taking my attention away from things. But I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I kind of want to see this as a black and white, because I think sometimes the color is throwing me off a bit.
Yeah.
I think that's a great suggestion. When I look at the rock is just, it's the way the light's hitting it, or the way it's been edited a little bit, it takes on such a different life than all the rest. And when we go to black and white, I think that it does improve.
I agree. Definitely.
Yep.
And then
the other thing I'll point out about color is just the blue of the shadows back over here is so different than everything else. And when we move to black and white, we fix that.
Yeah, you do. You have a lot of tones. You have cool tones, you have warm tones, you have extremely warm tones on the far right side. And then there was a lot of sort of red and purple that was appearing in the rocks on the left-hand side. And when you eliminate the color and you just get down to the structures, now we can start playing around with the detail and the shadows and the texture. And this is just one of those places that that's enough story to tell, and it's still an incredibly powerful story.
Yeah, I agree. You know, when you have that much color going on in a landscape scene, especially of a place that doesn't really possess that much color at any given time, it on the, you know, at first glance you can be like, wow, look at all this color, and then when you really start to pick it apart, it just gets to be a little too busy, I think. I agree with everything you just said, though, Steve, about bringing out the structure, because it's so awe-inspiring just in and of itself. Just the monochromatic, you know, display of this is gorgeous. So
yeah.
Nice, Jody. And I just cropped in just a little bit because I wasn't sure about that kind of zigzag. We got this gap going back. It felt to me like a very sharp angle.
Oh yeah.
That's one of those cases where there's so little showing. It's like the start of a story that ends abruptly. So that's a good point. You know, always watch your edges, see where things are ending in the corners and that type of stuff, because that all makes a very, very big difference on the overall image. Now, when you cut that out, you're almost left with the feeling that you're just down in it a bit more, rather than the top of it being so close to you. And you don't know how far up that rock goes.
Yeah.
So it leaves something to the imagination, which I always like.
Yeah. And one of the things I like here that helps, Jody, is because your depth of field is serious here. Everything is in focus. And I think that's great in the landscape, but that almost makes these two rocks run into each other. But you have a bit of light that helps them separate. So on that. All right.
And yeah, you can always put a filter on there or something to cause some more separation.
Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit of light. So Roger is working with a composite. So we've got this shot right up front. I'll tell you, it's a composite. He did too. It came from a kind of standard turn image from overhead and a gray day sun comboed into something like this. And Roger's curious, is this, you know, does this have the quality of the chops to be submitted to kind of our ultimate image review that's part of Pen?
That's a tough one. And let me start by saying I'm actually a huge fan of composites. I don't do a lot of them in my work, but, you know, I do a lot of sky replacements in real estate and stuff like that. But artistically, I love a good composite. I really do. And I really like this shot. As far as a competition photograph, I just don't know. I'm kind of on the fence on that. I don't know that this would be a merit. And it's hard for me to put my finger on why that is. It's just, to me, it kind of is obvious that it's a composite. One of the things that I love about good composites is generally you can't tell. They're almost like life to the extreme, but it actually really could happen. And of course this could, but to me, it does look like a composite. My first glance at it, I thought, well, this is a blending of two images. And I think that judges may feel the same way, Roger. I love his work and I love this photograph. I really do. But as far as it being a competition photograph, I just don't know that this would be one that you'd want to submit.
Steve, I'm curious. What do you think? I mean, just the bird, like if the sun wasn't there, because to me, the sun, it's not obvious that that's the sun to me, other than like, okay, that's what you would have behind the bird, but it almost just looks like a white circle on a gray backdrop, which is cool to me. That would like make for a really great logo for something like that. It's a really cool piece of art. But
that's well put. Yeah, it does look like it would be a logo.
Yeah, and it has instant impact, but I agree that I don't know, like the bird itself, I love the gesture of that bird, and I feel like there's probably something to be said about just that, you know, simple, but I didn't, sorry, go ahead.
When I look at it, when I look at the original and where he's come from and where he's ended up, I'd say, Roger, I think you've done a great job of working this image. There's just a little bit of off coloring and noise starting to appear in the shadows of the wings, and a sharpness that is just a little bit lacking that pulls me away. But man, I love the orange of the feet. I want the orange of the beak to pop even a little bit more. And I want this kind of feel a little bit cleaned up. If you were watching why Steve was talking, I brought the green and the aqua down saturation a little bit, and I felt like that helped. But I'd like to see some more work done in that area to kind of clean it up and make it just a crispy white turn.
Did you see Roger's? Did you see Roger's comment that he just posted? He says it's meant to be kind of a wall art image as opposed to competition. So that
I misremembered your message to me.
No, that definitely puts it in perspective for me, and I think I love it as a piece of wall art personally. So
yeah. So that changes that changes a lot of my advice that I was given. I was kind of taking it from a competition standpoint. Because I thought that was the question being posed, but. As wall art, it's killer. What I may suggest you work on, Roger, just because if this was my photo, I would like to try it, is changing the color around the sun, which is now kind of a very muted sort of cream color, to maybe put some blue in there, make it kind of cool and give it some color, because to me it just looks very flat. And I think if you do a little bit of blue, it would offset the bird and the sun just maybe a little bit more. But that also comes down to where are you going to put it in your space, what's around it, what color palette do you want to work with. If this is kind of what you're going for, then so be it. But I would just, out of curiosity, like to see it with a little bit of blue. Very, very little, though, I should say, because you don't want that circle to just become so ridiculously sharp and the edges, so extreme. But I don't know.
Yeah. So I just used that range masking tool. I threw a radial gradient around. It's on the outside by default, and just used temperature and used the range mask color to select. And that's enough to get it to be different than those wing colors so that the wings don't turn as blue. Although you can see they have some blue in them, which I think actually works.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's move on. Adam Beck's got Twinkle Twinkle Shooting Star. And I remember he posted this in the Pen group. This is a composite, but what he did not do is basically the camera is set and captured all of this in the same direction. And these are how these shooting stars appeared that night back in sometime in the summer. And it's a neat kind of
really cool
display of them. And you can see how many of them are coming from the same direction as they often do in these events. But then you got a couple of random bits shooting off the other way. What about this tree bit here? Looking for interesting foreground subject. I'm not so sure if this is it, though, Adam.
Yeah.
I love the sky. I love the blue water.
The trees just got a lot of, it almost plays into the multi-directional scattering of the stars, but not in a way that is consistent, because those are all just straight, very precise lines. And then you get to the tree and it's this organic thing that's just got a lot of curves and branches and stuff coming out. And one branch in particular is totally bugging me, where it comes right up to the horizon. And that horizon line is so defined and so dark and pixelated, in terms of just thick pixels right there, that I would at least, take that out. Let's see. Hey, and not to take away from David Carr and marketing, but we've still got his hashtag at the bottom of the screen there.
Oh.
If there's a way of
taking
out. I just keep
come on, guys, follow me, please.
I meant to say that earlier when we had Rogers that had 3 images to kind of look at the bottom of the screen.
I didn't even realize it. No, I didn't realize it. Yeah.
Off my game, certainly. All right. Yeah. And so, I think that, this can become a very minimalist picture. I think it's worth trying to take the tree completely out and having this very basic, almost moonscape-like foreground with just beach and water blurred. That color, and then the sky above it.
And cool. The question is, how do you do that? And we've got some lessons in Pen. But this is actually, given this scene, this is actually a very easy thing to get rid of using the clone stamp tool. You basically just need to sample an area along the shoreline, and it may take a while, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, stamp it over, and then go back with the healing tool and just kind of clean up any of the things that are repeating patterns and stuff like that. But it's a really super clean backdrop to this tree. So getting it out of there a little piece at a time, although it may take a little while, shouldn't be that daunting. You got to do it in Photoshop, obviously.
Yeah.
Yep. Agree. Thanks, Adam. Kevin Walk has one of the snowy landscapes from that lake he visited a little while ago.
Wow. Would you mind? What is going on with the sky? About halfway up, there's a horizontal line.
There's a pretty defined line there, isn't there? I think it just happens to be the clouds.
Wow.
Unless, Kevin, you did a sky replacement and it did something weird, but I think it just happens to be the clouds.
That is a strange formation to just, because look at even the blue swirl about just left of center, you know, it just stops abruptly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just,
well, and then there's like two little white dashes up in the upper right-hand corner, and I don't know, is it?
Those are little puffy clouds, I think, but definitely I'd want to clip those out. But that horizontal line, that's weird.
Yeah. I mean, even, you know, that's one of those situations I think where, like, even if that is natural, it's distracting because it's just so unusual. In my opinion, I think it just would be better to mute that out or something. And
Toby, would you mind? Can you pull this into Photoshop real quick, and I'll show everybody how to just sort of heal that out to see if it fixes it quickly.
Yep.
This is a bit of an experiment, folks, so it may not work, quickly for the show's sake. So using the healing Band-Aid tool, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And then I would make that line just, there you go, and just click on one side of it, hold the shift key down, click on the other side, draw a straight line, see if it softens that break.
Not so much.
So
let's try a little bit of spastic drawing a little bit at a time and see if it'll blend it a little. Oh no.
Yeah, you might have to do like a layer mask kind of thing or something to really to kind of blend that.
One more time with a less hard brush and see if we can get it blended a little bit more. Not too much.
Okay, the liquefy tool. So many. This is folks. This is actually a good lesson in, like, we don't always know what to do right away. Yeah, sometimes you really have to experiment and play around. And I worked for an hour and a half last night on something and still couldn't figure out how to get it right. So. Yep.
For sure.
Yeah. So then let's take the other. Let's do it a little bit more manually, where I take a soft brush, and now I'm doing the clone stamp, right, or a healing brush, but not the automatic healing brush. So I'm sampling now, and paint. You could kind of get it's a little again a little too bright down there, but you can just kind of break that up by coming down into it.
Yeah,
in a little area, so it's not such a defined line.
Do you think that could have been a graduated filter that just didn't really have much gradualness to it? That was.
I don't know. Kevin's in chat. He says, "I plan to fill the white in, just didn't do it yet."
And he said it's all natural. So.
Yeah,
which I don't doubt. I mean, every now and then there's an anomaly in nature that just is kind of strange, but. Again, it's just like, do you want, like in a finished image, if this was hanging on the wall, you don't want that to be something people go, wait, why is there a straight line,
Yeah. Now, Steve P in chat was suggesting, could you bring it down to this line? And I mean, I'm going to say not in this composition, but I think that is an interesting idea, because there's a certain point, we talk about this a lot, where the sky isn't doing anything different. It's kind of soft, wispy clouds. Where is the real story here? And Kevin, this is something I think we've been working with you on some. Let's get in tight. There was a foreground that I don't think really added anything to this. But the sun setting right behind the trees and this kind of nice swoop of the trees is as a whole story within here.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot on that show, and Steve P, that's a great recommendation. And what the reason we talk about this a lot isn't to tell you to take these big scenes and then, you know, cut it up to tell your story. Right. It's to hopefully train your mind to think when you're out there shooting the scene, like if this is all natural and you've got that break in the horizon that's going on, setting up your camera to shoot this scene, and you notice that and you're like, okay, above that there's not a whole lot different that's going on with the sky. I don't need to show as much as I possibly can. I might use a longer lens and zoom in and do something like this right out of camera, and then you've got a larger file to work with. So I love this scene now. The light is just more consistent. You've taken out the cool colors from the top that were pressing down on the warmer colors, which is, you know, it's just now it's just a much more warm, tranquil sort of scene where before it just had a certain edge to it, and then you throw in there the really odd thing that was going on with the sky, and once you notice it, you just can't seem to look away from it, unfortunately. So I love this. This looks great. And if you wanted, you can even come in from the left side a little bit more. If you wanted it to be more of a 16:9 sort of, you know, ratio, something like that. But I'm sorry, right side.
Oh, you come in from the right, a little closer to the sun. Yeah, nice. Thanks, Kevin. All right. Romaine submitted another frosty landscape. Wow. Some serious ice buildup.
That is seriously some ice, yeah.
Wow. Longer exposure. I see a little bit of softness in the water. Yeah, 3 seconds in the water.
I wonder if you could get away with flipping this, or is this a place that a lot of people know?
Why would you like to flip it, Steve?
Well, the leading lines of the photograph start way up high, and then they lead you out to the lower right, where, you know, typically you want your leading lines, if possible, to start in the lower left and lead you up and to the right. It's just more pleasing to the eye. But if it's a place where you can't do this, or it's a place that a lot of people know, obviously flipping it is just a dumb idea. But if you can get away with it, I personally love the way this feels visually compared to the way that it was presented. But if you can't, then you can't. That's just the way it goes.
Let's say we can go with it. Yeah, we can. I'm curious to see. It's very cool blue image, which does help kind of with that feeling of cold, but it's almost a little too blue. So I'm just going to see. And it's kind of like what David Carr was saying. I don't always know if this is going to look better, but I want to see if I warm it up just a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to bring highlights down a little bit, because I feel like we're starting to lose some of that cool texture in some of the brighter parts of that. And actually, let me bring overall exposure down a touch. Highlights down a little bit more. Yeah.
And now, if we're really going to go artistic with this, I know we've already flipped it and stuff. I would consider, if this was my picture, I'd probably take it into the Photoshop, and then I would clone the rocks on the beach to just be icy beach. Only because then it keeps all the darker elements with the rocks and the icicles coming off as a waterfall and the trees and stuff on the island itself. But again, you guys, my words, you got to just throw out the window if this is a place that a lot of people know, or you're going to show this to people who do know it. Obviously, that's a total misrepresentation, or you just need to chalk it up as art and kind of explain yourself if somebody asks. Which,
you know, one thing I was kind of curious if it could be done is to, well, it looks like the horizon's a little crooked, so you could straighten that up, and then I wonder if you could cut out as much of the beach as possible, you know, kind of like crop up to a narrow kind of crop, and then you may be able to get away with eliminating that, or coming into the beach a little bit and then eliminating the beach, you know, just making this monolithic like ice island kind of the feature
stand on its own.
Because to me, the distraction was the beach, even though, like, I know that's what you saw, but to me, the real feature is this kind of cool island with all this ice and, trees growing up out of it. It just becomes much simpler. So there's a way to get that beach out that would be completely unnoticeable. And I don't think anybody that knows this spot would be like, hey, that beach is supposed to be right there.
Right.
Yeah, that's actually Carr. Wonderful suggestion. In fact, I like that better than flipping the image, because now it's taken it as it was taken, assuming Romain hadn't flipped it to begin with. You remove that beach, and now the leading line still continues to go left to right.
Yeah,
with the island itself. So
yeah, and it's probably some heavy lifting in Photoshop to get rid of that little bit of ice, but that is definitely a spot I would get rid of at this point, because there's just not enough of it there to tell the story. And when I saw the whole beach, it just kept pulling my eye away from this cool like unusual island. So.
Yeah. One thing that I want to say, one is that, Romain, I don't know if you had cropped already some, but when we straightened it, we lost a little bit off the top of that tree. And so we often caution folks out there, give yourself a little bit more room than you would otherwise. We have cameras with a lot of megapixels. Again, I'm not saying shoot wide on everything, but just a little bit more room. Also, I think this really illustrates one of those things that we do also often say, and that is there's so many stories within a story. And I love this image. I love this completely ice draped island, but I keep coming back to a story right in here.
Yeah.
Like this maw. This looks like just a monster's mouth, and this kind of tree next to it. And I think this is just really cool. Yeah. And that like next layer of ice in there. And so I'd love, and Romain, hopefully you have some captures, or you can get back here, some tighter shots that give us just kind of the detail that's going on in there. Very minimalistic view.
It's interesting. I just noticed she shot this 3 seconds at f/22. So I'm guessing this is, she was trying to kind of soften the water without a filter, would be my guess. But 3 seconds, actually, this does look like a pretty bright scene. So maybe there was a filter on there.
I think she probably had an ND on. Yeah, it's cool. Thank you, Romain. Yeah. All right, we're gonna move through here. Do we have two from? One's from Mary and one's from Becky. They were on the Alaska trip with me a couple of weeks back, and maybe we can talk about both of them together.
So wait, did the sky kind of look like that? Because I saw the first
absolutely
one, and I thought, wow, some work is done to the sky. Now I see another one from another person, and it's almost the same. Like that.
Yeah, it was freaking magical. It really was. Wow. It was minus 25 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 26, minus 24. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Right in that vicinity. So it was cold. But it looked like this, and not only did it look like this, and let me just tell you, for those of us who were in the vehicle with Dave McKay, who was driving, he almost killed us, but he wanted to make sure we got to this light. But this light lasted forever, so he didn't need to almost kill us. It just hung, that purple just hung in the sky for so long.
That is awesome.
I just want to put that out there to the world. Those who were in the vehicle with us, they know. Okay,
that's gorgeous. Yeah,
it's pretty epic. I like Becky's. Not to make this a competition between the two, but what grabs me about Becky's is, again, kind of the simplicity. And Mary, we have some, the leading lines of the road here, but we get a bit of the messiness. We have a little bit of the brown snow here, a little bit of this dirty road over here, a chunk laying in the snow. And Becky's pretty much is just a kind of a straight on shot. Look, you can actually even see this tree here is this tree here. So here's Becky went with this kind of look over here, and also this thinner crop, I think, works really well.
I'd almost want to split the difference just a little bit, though, because, man, that sky is so beautiful. And I love how it really fades into a super light pink at the top of Mary's photograph. Like really just those bands of light are absolutely stunning. And I'd like to see a little bit more snow in the foreground. So with Becky's image, you can always add that on, create a canvas in Photoshop, add an inch or so at the bottom, and kind of, clone some more snow down there. With Mary's, you'd actually be able to work that with a crop.
Yeah.
And I really would like to include some of that lighter pink at the top of the frame, because I think it's just so pretty.
It looked like you just brought up kind of the original crop of Becky's photo there. It looked like she had some more information to work with. So,
yep. For a moment, Lightroom allowed me to see that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Can we see the beach? Oh, you guys don't see that it's a beach ball, do you? Oh, there it goes. There it goes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking the same thing, Steve. Like just a little more snow on the bottom and a little more sky at the top on Becky's. Because it looks like they both have the same, pretty much the same elements to work with here.
Yeah. Wow, what a cool scene.
Yeah, it's just it's so peaceful and freezing. But
I mean, obviously, you got to go black and white with a shot like this, right?
Yeah. Careful, people might not know you're joking.
I'm kidding, folks.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Okay, and Lightroom let me. Nice. Okay.
Wow.
Hey, one frosty image to another.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to come in so that it starts with clean branch. Just kind of simplify a little bit. And then I'm going to come in just a bit, not a ton, but just kind of balance that a little. Oh, I chopped off the top. I don't want that.
Just rotate it a bit.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. So we're coming right out of the corner. That's Steve just mentioned. We really want to look deliberate there. And then I'm going to bump texture and clarity up a little bit. And this might be one where you want to paint that on a little bit more, because as you bump texture and clarity up, it can do a little bit of weird things with the out of focus in the background. Like it starts to make these lines a little bit more defined than you want.
Yeah, so, and I'm seeing a lot of blurriness on the main stock of the branch.
F2.8, 200 millimeters. And so Mike, you got to watch out when you shoot with a longer lens. I even shot this. I was at 400 and f8. My subject was far off, but your depth of field really is quite shallow. So you want to watch for that. It would be nice for this bit, the closest bits to us actually are just out of focus. And then we get to be more in focus, just right in line with the branch itself.
If I look at this, if I was going to spend some time on this, I would go into Photoshop and really try to darken everything outside of this one branch with these icicle kind of formations around it, because it's actually a really beautiful structure. I mean, all of those, it's just it's nature, ice doing its thing, but it gets lost amongst the background, and it would take some painstaking work. But you could really make something very beautiful out of this. It would be more of a Photoshop thing, I think. But I think you guys know what I'm saying. It's just, I've had to lately with some of the images that I've been editing, I've had to get pretty liberal with some of that kind of stuff. I posted one the other day of like a lioness in the Serengeti. I worked that image hard. If you saw the original, it was okay, but I really worked it hard to get the light to do what it was doing. And that's, I think that's sometimes what you have to do in an image like this is figure out what you really want to say with it, and then work it. So.
Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't see your original of that image, but I did see another participant post their image that is very similar. And I thought, first when I saw yours, I thought, oh, they caught some nice light. And then I saw the other participants and I thought, David worked that really well.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about the lioness?
Yes, the lioness. Yeah.
I
happened to notice that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do a video on that one, but that's a whole
that would be
subject,
great.
so,
I think people would like that because it turned out really well. I'd put
Thank
your
you.
Instagram to follow you up again, but it's already was on the screen for over an hour. So.
Yeah, man, come on, man, promotion. No, I'm kidding.
All right, yeah, okay. We're going to do another duo because we are lucky enough to have two beautiful images here of the Firefall, Rob Van Essen and Paul Anderson. This is that incredible cool event that happens in Yosemite National Park in kind of early-ish February, I'd say, mid-February, where the setting sun can light up this Horsetail Falls. And both of these are quite beautiful.
Yeah. Rob's image, man, with those clouds right there kind of coming over the crest of the mountain. And I'd like to see maybe a little bit more contrast, kind of, work the image the way Paul Anderson's image is.
Yeah.
This, I don't know. I can't decide which one I like better, because I'm kind of a minimalist. I like a very intentional, simple story. And so that, draws me to what Paul has done here, where you don't have trees and all that other stuff. I mean, aside from what's up there. So you do get a sense of scale. But the other image, with that cloud and everything, is really cool. I just want to see it a little bit more contrasty, so the falls are just really popping. I mean, not that they're not, but you know what I mean. The rock, make the rock a little darker.
Yeah, I think there's room for contrast there. I think both are excellent images. I'm drawn to both. I don't have any feedback for Paul, but I agree with your feedback for Rob. But I do love the inclusion of the cloud across the top. And there's something about the teeny tininess of these trees over here. Paul's got that too, but there's something about that small world view that just really, I think, gives you a little bit more sense of the grandness of the scale of this on this side.
Yeah.
But both are very strong images.
I'm always so jealous when I see pictures of Horsetail Falls doing this, because I've never done this shoot before, and hoping someday in my lifetime I will.
Yeah, definitely. A cool thing to experience. Steve Pressman, we got to talk about his for a minute as we start to wrap these up and move on to other things, because he said he left work early just to be able to watch this show. So he was with us in Yellowstone, but he did some shooting on his own prior to our trip and caught a bunch of snowy faced elk.
Well, here I was about to give Paul a whole ration about his signature on his image, but now we've got Steve's to talk about. I'm actually just kidding. I gave him a hard time on our trip. Aside from the watermark, man, this is awesome. I love this picture. I love the way it was processed. I love all they're just, some are looking off, but most are looking at the camera. And
it's fantastic.
Got the one butt over there with the dude looking back, like, dudeess, I don't know. But I just love the picture. I don't really have any suggestions about how to improve this, except that watermarks take away from the photo. And for those of you who think that I'm just giving you a hard time, I was a big time watermark guy for a long, long time, many years. And if you want to do it, it's fine. It's totally fine. It's but every time I see it, I'm like, oh man, this image would be awesome if it wasn't for that dang signature down there.
Yeah, I agree.
The only thing I would give a little bit of feedback, I'd love to see just a teeny tiny bit more detail in the snow. Some of it down in this region feels a little bright, but that's pretty minor. And overall, I really nice.
But it creates a lot of that negative space that I think makes it really powerful. I agree. At least you see the detail around their feet where they're standing. Yes. And you could go for seeing a little bit more, but the way it's come out is really, really pretty.
This is one of those images where what's happening in the scene is the moment itself has so much impact that it's like, now you're just cleaning up the details. You're not trying to make a mediocre image great through editing. You're taking what's already like if this was a iPhone photo of this, I'd be like, holy cow, that's so cool. But so now you're taking this amazing moment where all these elk are looking at the camera and you're just fine tuning it, and so I agree, Steve or Toby. Yeah, I think just like look at the detail, try to bring some of that out. And I feel the same way about the watermark thing. I totally understand the desire to put them on there to kind of like display your name and your work, but I just know that the vast majority of the pros that I follow don't do it, and so I kind of just don't do it as well, because I'm just like, well, I'm going to do what they do, and maybe that's just because they're already known, but it's not. I'm not judging. I'm not saying you're wrong for doing it. I don't know that it's really helping an image at this point. So,
yeah. Well, I feel like more than anything, it's just kind of dates an image. I think that it was such a big deal for so many years, and in many ways it still is. But it was such a big deal for so many years, going back, 4 or 5 years ago. And then it just got to be so much, and everybody's got their photo logo signature and everybody, so it's, I get it. I honestly, I do get it. And like I said, I had done it for a lot of years. But I just kind of feel like, man, I want my photos to just be sort of timeless. And that always says to me, like, okay, that's a very, how should I put this? It's a real 2015 to 2018 sort of thing that people are doing a lot. And so, yeah. I mean, if that's your thing, keep doing it. It's fine.
Yeah,
I agree.
Okay, we're gonna put a pause on and reviewing these, the rest of them. If we didn't get to yours, I'm so sorry. We will come back to them next week, so you don't need to send them again.
Wait. We gotta get to Kelly Mitchell's.
Do we have to get to Kelly Mitchell's?
No, I'm just giving her a hard time. She was in the chat. She says, "Don't look at the bottom of mine." Sorry.
Got it. Yeah. I took a glance. It's okay, Kelly. Yeah, and I'm sorry about that, but we'll get to these next week. I just want to kind of keep the show flowing. And plus, I just got a message that I just want to share from you all. If you remember on the Creative Lounge, was it our very first Creative Lounge that we did with Mike Tedesco? He is a local. Actually, he's in the Seattle area. He is a sports and dance photographer. He just sent me this picture. His Sony A1 has arrived. So now you see the time. There it is.
Awesome.
Mine arrives tomorrow. Why doesn't it arrive today? I don't know. Because I whined too much. That's why.
I know
how that is, man.
Yeah. I don't have enough subscribers. That's right. Yeah. Sony was checking the boxes. They're like, nope. So, yeah. So that's exciting. We're excited for Mike. If you haven't watched any of our Creative Lounges, they're on my YouTube channel. And they are awesome conversations with interesting people that are like doing stuff with their photography. And, it's interesting with David Carr, I think I can kind of hear it in the tone of your voice when you're like, capture one, but you're a working photographer, and you need to not spend, hours and hours learning something new for marginal benefits, I think. And there are some benefits to capture one, but when Lightroom allows you to get through your work and get through what you need to do, then that's fine. Yeah. And so
that's a great way to put it. It's just it comes down to the time that I have to spend on things, the time I want to spend, and the emotional energy that you have to put into editing a shoot. And it has nothing to do with like whether something is capable. It's just part of it is like familiarity, and then and you're right, marginal difference is I think where we are at this point. And there's a part of me that likes to be contrarian, and wants to try to do the thing that everyone else isn't doing. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it bites me in the butt. So
I get what you were saying earlier though about the presets with the brushes and filters.
Yeah,
that's the one thing in Camera Raw, because I use Camera Raw a lot more nowadays.
Sure.
That's the one thing in Camera Raw that drives me absolutely crazy. It's like, man, you've had these preset brushes and graduated filters in Lightroom forever. It'd be so easy to put that into Camera Raw.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually went into Capture One yesterday with the update to play around with that. Well, now they've got the brushes, great, but it just seemed very cumbersome, and maybe I just need to play with it some more. But I just was like, man, Lightroom. What I figured was whatever Lightroom is doing, like if it's slow at times, it's still faster than me trying to muddle my way through Capture One edit. It's like the cumulative time is still less if I'm waiting on Lightroom to catch up at times. So anyway, yeah.
Well said. All right. Well, David, I want you to keep talking. So
Sure.
The Nikon Z9 has been announced. Like you said, this was something that TP Review sat down with head of Nikon a few days ago, or I don't know when they sat down, but they published a few days ago, hey, a series flagship mirrorless is coming. And I was like, yeah, okay, it's kind of expected, but it's nice that they said this year. And then it was just a day or two later that Nikon officially announced the Z9.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of specs or detail about it yet,
Nope.
other than it's going to use a newly developed stacked CMOS sensor. For those who like photography more than they like camera nerd stuff, this just means that the sensor readout is going to be very fast. The only cameras really out there using stacked CMOS sensors that we have our hands on now are Sony A9 and Sony A1s, which means that you can have silent shutter without worrying about rolling shutter. Basically, you can photograph sports and birds in flight without really worrying about any kind of distortion. You can also have a decent flash sync speed with a silent shutter or electronic shutter. They're the same thing in this kind of discussion. It means you're not actually using the mechanical shutter.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. What else are you hoping or looking for in this camera, David? I mean, what?
Well, so for me, the biggest, the biggest feature that we do know is that vertical grip with the battery grip built in, like, and with controls, the shutter button, your aperture and shutter speed dials. Because I shot with that D5 for 3 years, and I miss that. I don't necessarily miss the DSLR necessarily. I mean, it was great, but I'm in mirrorless now. I love mirrorless. I love the mirrorless glass. I love the technology. But that is the feature to me, is that grip, and the fact that they're calling it a sports camera, but it's most likely going to be in the neighborhood of 50 megapixels, which is already insane. But the Z7 is like 46-ish megapixels. Plenty of resolution for cropping, for whatever. To have a camera that has this vertical grip with what's most likely going to be excellent battery life, because the D5 battery life was ridiculous. I never ever changed the battery. I just had an extra battery just in case, but I never was at a point where I was like, I've run this battery down, I need to put another one in. Never. So to be in that ballpark for battery life, to have a robust camera body that I can turn vertical and still kind of shoot very comfortably in portrait mode, that's enough for me. But then you throw on top of that, most likely a much improved autofocus system. And they're talking about the LCD display that was on the back of the D5, the D6 is kind of getting old school. It's just kind of like one of those, it's kind of like what you would see on the top of a lot of cameras, just that kind of like multi-information display. Mm-hmm. They're talking about an updated version of that possibly. But I don't even care about all that. Just having that grip and a beefy camera. I know a lot of times we sell the mirrorless thing to people on, oh, it's light and small, but I don't care as much about that as I do just, I just want it to be able to do all the things I want it to do. Mm-hmm. It will come at a cost, but for somebody like myself, this could be like the all-in-one camera. Great resolution, super fast speed, and just you could roll it down the side of a mountain and it would probably still work, So we'll see, but I feel very confident that it's going to be an awesome camera. So.
Yeah, and you can see here in this picture that kind of vertical integrated grip that you're talking about with the shutter button and the controls and the dials all there, which really make it easy to use in any orientation.
Yeah. And I used it a lot on my D5, a lot for portraits. Turning it that way and just feeling so comfortable shooting in portrait mode, not having to twist my hand, which big deal. But there is something about if you're staying in that mode for a while, you're like really trying to keep it. It's so comfortable, So
yep.
I'm excited.
That's good. It should be really interesting that kind of one of the questions is it going to use the same Sony sensor that the A1 has, so it could be around 50 megapixels as well, or it could be something no one's really sure. No one's saying yet if they are using a Sony sensor, they have in the past, or if they've developed one of their own. Either way, it's exciting. And so I mean, you've been mentioning it, that you mentioned at the top of the show that you've been shooting some sports. That's with the Z6 and the Z7, and you're happy with the autofocus in those cases?
It's it is hit or miss sometimes. I don't know if I was really A/Bing it with a Sony or a Canon. From everything I've read and heard, I would imagine the Sony or the Canon would beat the Nikon in that, and I'm willing to admit that. But for the most part, I haven't had much trouble, because the fact is, like, no matter what the camera is capable of doing, and I was talking about this with somebody earlier today, no matter what the camera is capable of doing, you still have to be good as a photographer at knowing how to get it to do that, and also knowing how to anticipate the moments that are about to happen. If there's a bird in flight, you can't just like throw the camera up and start bursting and then just expect it to be great. You still have to have some sense of photography. And so I love that cameras are able to do what they're able to do, but I still have to figure out how to use that to its full advantage. And so there are times, and I'm shooting the Nikon Z6 and Z7, not the Z6 II or Z7 II, which are supposed to be an improvement. I haven't messed with them. But there are times I'm frustrated. I'm like, oh, why is it doing that? Why is it focusing over there when I want it to focus here? But it's a fairly small price to pay. I think I'm still walking away with plenty of images that I'm happy with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. So people like me, us YouTubers, we need to, I often enjoy when I do a review of making a comparison because it's a little bit easier. But the reality is working photographers are in a system that works for them. And then usually the difference in the real world is not nearly as much as YouTubers make it out to be.
It's not. I mean, I think that's, I think it was John Mayfield and I were kind of, he's on there right now. We were talking kind of on Facebook today, just kind of messaging and then I actually talked to somebody else earlier about this today, but like people just, they find something to complain about no matter what it is. And those comments always rise to the top. So you read about all the stuff it's not going to do, all the stuff it doesn't do. And, oh, this system does it so much better here. And it's points well taken, but just get it done at the end of the day. You're working with incredible equipment, no matter what system you're working in. It's all kind of amazing that we can do what we can do with what we have.
So do we have any there's some comments about pricing. Are there any speculations about pricing on this thing?
All of their flagship cameras in the last, I would say 10 years or so, maybe 6 or 7 years, have been around $6,500. It's a lot of money, but that's kind of where they land. I'm imagining this is probably going to be in that same ballpark. So it's a chunk of change, but
that's kind of becoming, especially with the Sony Alpha 1, that's almost becoming the new normal for your flagship camera now. Viewers are flying like crazy about Canon having an R1 released later this year. Which will be, right in line with the Z9 here. And they're talking about pricing wise, expected to be somewhere around the Sony Alpha 1. And then the next, comments are like, everybody thought the R5 was super expensive when it was first introduced. Yeah. But now you're talking about the next step up from that. So you're actually looking at like the 1DX in Canon and, so now you've got the professional sports shooters, wildlife photographers and stuff like that with the dual grips and everything else. I wouldn't be surprised. 6,500 is probably right on the money.
Yeah, I think it is. And I will say this, I sold my D5 3 years later after owning it, almost 3 years to the date. And I got most of that back. I got $4,000 for it 3 years later, which to me was pretty significant. Like it cost me $2,500 to own a killer camera for 3 years and shoot with it and make money with it. So it was almost like I rented it for 3 years for $2,500. Like, so sometimes I don't look at the total cost as like I'm completely wiped out of $6,500. I mean, it's a lot of money. I don't want to kid anybody, but the way the camera gear some of it holds its value pretty well, especially if you take care of it. So, you're always kind of rolling some of that value into the next thing, unless you're just keeping it for sentimental value. But
yeah, I'm I'm laughing. And John, I'm so sorry if you're being serious, but John Mayfield put a comment. He said, Z9, no pop-up flash, fail.
I think we know. I
don't know if you're being serious, John. Maybe you're into your pop-up flash, but
Yeah, he said that to me in a message earlier, and I said, yeah, and only 2 card slots, like 2020.
Okay, good. Then I don't feel too bad for looking at the comment and snickering.
Yeah, no. Steve P wants to say compare it to the Sony A9. I mean, I'm very reluctant to make any comparisons all we have is a development announcement, but I think this is going to compare more favorably with the A1. I think it's going to be better than the A9 in a lot of cases. But then, of course, the A9 right now can be had for $2,800 new, the original, and the A9 Mark II I think is still up around $4,000. So David Carr, you mentioned that was the D3 really holding its price.
D5.
I worry D5, thank you, sorry. I worry that these mirrorless, they won't hold their price as well. But
they might not.
Maybe the flagships will. Maybe the flagships will, but I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I'll say this and leave it at that. But like the flagship cameras, and part of it, like when you spend an ungodly amount of money on something, you tend to justify it in every way possible. But that D5 had a feel to it that it just felt like a workhorse. It just felt like it meant business. And so I don't know, like it gives you a sense of confidence that like not that we can ever really blame the gear on bad shots anyway, but like the thing was so capable for DSLR that I was like, I have no excuse other than my own lack of knowledge or ability or whatever. So, and it just felt like you could, like I said, roll it down the side of a mountain. It would pick it up and just keep going. It just felt so tough. So
yeah. And I think Nikon's done a really nice job with ergonomics, and in this model, I think looks to continue that.
Yeah, I think it looks good to me. So
yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on. Let's have a little fun for a moment. So let's share this here. Have you all seen this going around? So this is part of MyHeritage, and one of their advertisements went viral in the last couple of weeks. What you can feed them is a picture of your great-grandmother or somebody that you just have this old grainy picture from. And then using artificial intelligence, it will examine that picture and then animate it, bringing your grandmother to life. The example that went viral was Abe Lincoln basically making a commercial for MyHeritage. Pretty neat. So I don't have or wanted to share a picture of my grandmother. So I found this picture, and I thought, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if I upload this picture to MyHeritage? Oh, there we go.
Look at that. It looks like a Disney animatronic.
They even got my half a mustache correct. That's great. Nice work.
What has happened to your eyebrows? Oh my God. Oh man.
And I think they photoshopped some chiclets into my mouth or something.
I could watch this for hours, I think. But I'm curious. If you have an old picture, it's a free account. You can just go up to MyHeritage and upload a picture of Steve or your grandmother. It's your choice, and see what kind of results you get. It's pretty interesting.
That is incredible.
That's just okay. So I have such a love-hate relationship with AI in photo editing because it is going to be the future of photo editing. No question about it. It is powerful, awesome stuff. It's efficient. It's amazing. The sky replacement stuff that uses it is just awesome. That's about all I've done with it at this point. But I do worry. I worry about manipulation with news and media and what's real and that kind of stuff. I think rightfully so. We have reason to be concerned about the stuff because we're just scratching the surface right now. Give this just 3 to 5 years and it's going to be incredible.
Yeah. It really will be. I mean, I saw a video not too long ago of somebody had taken like Obama speaking and put all this gibberish, like nonsensical stuff, and it sounded like him, and it pretty much looked like him. I mean, you kind of had to pay attention to realize it wasn't really his mouth wasn't quite lining up with the words. But I was like, man, they're going to be able to do anything. And
and
it's just
the more The more recent one is the Tom Cruise. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, Tom Cruise deep fake. And it is a digital mapping on a Tom Cruise like lookalike guy. And so his mannerisms, I think most people watching, if they were just like, someone said, hey, look at this clip of Tom Cruise, 90% of people would be like, okay, yeah, that was Tom Cruise. I think very few people would notice anything. And you're right, Steve, we are just scratching the surface.
Oh, yeah.
There's definitely good and bad with this. So, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, hey,
okay.
A grainy photo of grandma and you get her to blink her eyes or something, fine. That's great. But I'm a little worried about where it's going, least of which is me on a boat in, where is this anyway? New Zealand?
New Zealand on
with half a mustache and some crazy looking eyebrows. Look, I got crazy eyebrows as it is. I don't need those to be enhanced.
Those are like Charlie Chaplin.
I know. Oh gosh. Oh, that's enjoyable. That's enjoyable. All right, something else that's enjoyable as we start to wrap up the show. This is the tease of the most fun toy / tool ever. I'm going to get a proper review out of this soon. I'm kind of dragging my feet because it's one of those things where when I finish the review, then, well, I should just send it back, right? There's no reason to keep it any longer. So I don't want to send it back. For photographers, which is primarily this channel, it's of limited use. I mean, it's an 8 megapixel camera, JPEGs only. But for creating cinematic videography, this is a really cool tool. And seriously, it is incredibly fun to fly. If you've ever wanted to be a jet pilot, but you're kind of like scared away from the idea of joining the Air Force and having to wear government issued underwear or something like that, this is the alternative. I mean, skimming over the treetops with this thing is so much fun wearing the goggles. You look like a goofball. I've since learned, since I flew it for that first week, that you should be sitting down for a couple of reasons. One, I find myself starting to lean so much and I get a little queasier. And two, I'm going to say this in the review. I don't think I'll cut this. It's embarrassing, but I almost collapsed the other day because I thought I was about to crash. My knees started to give out.
Oh, wow.
And luckily I had a railing next to me. And so then I was like, you know what? I always see these FPV pilots sitting down. I think that might be why. It's because they're lazy, but I think it's because, like me, I'm sure their knees will give out when they think they're about to crash.
Well, so is it like a VR, like 360 or 180 view, or it's like
no? It's just out the front of the camera. That's all you get. But it's very immersive feeling.
Yeah, I would
mean, there's no control from the goggles. DJI does offer other goggles with other drones that will allow you to turn the camera, but really you're just seeing exactly what you're seeing out of this camera in forward direction. And it does. One of my complaints always of flying is that there's a lot of distractions. And when you're really trying to focus on that little tablet screen in front of you, or even if you put it on an iPad, it's hard. But when the goggles are up to your face, there is nothing but what you see in front of the drone. And it makes it very easy to see exactly what you're doing, exactly what you're getting.
It's cool.
And it's also freaking fun.
Do you have the ability to start it up on camera so everybody can hear the startup procedure?
Oh, yeah. The sound
sounds so cool.
It's going to be a little loud. It's a very satisfying sound.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And it's for anybody who hasn't been following this, it is fast. In sport mode, 60 miles an hour, easy. And in full manual mode, which I'm still easing into and not very good at flying, you can hit almost 100 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour.
Nuts.
That's insane.
So one of the things, whenever I'm flying drones, I'm always nervous. You do have, there's always airplanes, especially on the kind of the hill I live in. We're close to a couple airports. I am totally allowed to fly here, but I have to be careful not to fly too far in one direction or the drone will just stop. But every once in a while, there's a really low airplane or helicopter that comes over. And when I'm flying my normal drones, it's always really scary because your reaction time and the speed of those drones is kind of, I don't want to call it unresponsive, but it's slow enough that it feels like I wouldn't be able to get out of the way if I was at my maximum altitude and a plane came in at its minimum altitude. But this thing, something's coming towards it. You just put it into a dive and you are just plummeting towards the earth and you pull out of that and it's just fun.
That's cool. Wow.
So yeah.
I feel like drones, it's like it was like all of a sudden, hey, we have drones now, and now they're incredible. Like there was like very little climb to like, like it just feels like they were already incredible, and now they're just like mind blowing. So,
yep. And where are they going to be in a couple more years, especially when you put more of the AI into it?
Yeah.
But so yeah, full review of that coming pretty soon. I think we're going to wrap up there. We'll talk about NFTs maybe next week.
Sure.
They're a really interesting idea that allows digital artists to sell limited edition of their digital artwork. It's tied to blockchain, unique codes. It's an interesting idea. I don't know if it'll be around to stick around or not, but it's something that I'm curious to talk about more. And then you, David and Steve, I want to pick your brains about your favorite metal finishes. I've got a question in from somebody. I put a call out for questions like a month or two ago, and I've been slowly answering those. And one of them that was very good question that I'd like to answer more thoroughly than just my own opinion is, like, what are your favorite metal finishes? How do you decide what finish to put on your metal prints? I think we all print from Bay Photo. They recently released a nice little article. If you're itching to know more about it now, you can go to the link right down below this video. But otherwise, stay tuned for that.
Yeah. And we forgot to mention this at the beginning of the show, but a question was asked about what was in my glass that I was drinking. Carl, I haven't seen you sipping your martini. Are you doing it on camera?
It's gone, man.
Oh, sneaky.
While when we're doing the image review, I don't know.
We forgot to bring that up at the beginning of the show. Carr sent a message out to us, said, "Hey, okay, I'll be on, and I'm gonna have cocktail in hand if anybody wants to join me." And for David and I, it's 5 o'clock when we start the show, so it's cocktail hour.
Yeah,
Toby, it's a different story, but I think you can have a gin and tonic at 2 p.m. and be okay.
Yeah.
Some days that's totally true. Yeah.
I had a
one anecdote I want to about new tech and being excited. I don't if you follow DP Review, Chris and Jordan, the on-camera hosts for most of that YouTube channel. They're trying to hit 300,000 subscribers, and if they did by a certain date, Jordan, who is primarily the videographer, would start filming with a Pentax. I think it's a K1, which is not the best video camera. Okay. They're pretty terrible for video. So it was kind of like, haha, we hit our goal. Here's now how you have to suffer, Jordan. And linked below this video is a link that he shared. He's like, you all giving me crap saying it doesn't look too bad. Look at it. And it is a still from the video of something like the K1 versus a more reasonable video camera. And the difference in quality is striking. But if you go watch those last couple of videos that they've used to shoot, or they use the K1 to shoot, it's fine. It looks fine. So, and I feel like we say this often. One, if you know what you're doing with your gear, great. Two, get out there and start making pictures, even if it's not the best gear.
Yeah.
Because all of these cameras today, they might not be perfectly the most perfect thing for capturing X, Y, or Z, but in almost all cases, they're good enough for capturing X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Real quick, Gareth wants to know, do professional photographers encrypt their clients' work before backing up to the cloud? No, I don't. Or haven't. Not that I'm working with many clients these days, but generally it's password protected, but not encrypted. I don't know, gentlemen, do either of you have an opinion on that different?
Well, I mean, my stuff's real estate, so it's fine. If somebody wants to steal the images, go ahead. So no, I don't. But I guess if I was doing more big dollar items, or if I was Peter Lick or somebody like that, it'd be a whole different story.
I think that's how I feel about it. I feel like most of the shoots that I've done up till now, it's either somebody I know or somebody who I've met through someone else that I know, and there's a trust factor to it that perhaps I'm naive, but part of it is just it's either laziness or forgetfulness. Like to really focus in on that, do that the proper way. I just haven't had any issues with it yet. Hopefully I won't. Not saying don't do it. I don't get too hung up on it at this point.
Yeah, and I will say more of my bigger ticket items that I've sold where people have purchased, large prints for their house, whether they're metal or canvas or, even paper prints. Those are strictly, I don't send them, they don't get digital anything. I send them a sample, a very small sample, and okay, is this what you're looking for? And then I do all that with the print house, and then they get the physical print. So there's no need for that type of transaction. So at least in my world, but the real estate stuff, I do give full res files in case somebody wants to, go to print on that, or let's say they want to put a billboard up or something, which hasn't happened yet, but you never know. They'll get full res files, and I don't encrypt those because it's just a real estate transaction. I'm not too worried about it.
Sure.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Good question. Thanks for your inputs, gentlemen. We're going to wrap it up. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. You can follow him at Scurich, and I can't make any fun of him. He has been posting to Instagram. He's even posted stories.
Yeah, man.
And this is the first time ever, Steve. I didn't ask your permission, but the thumbnail for this show is that picture you took of me in Yellowstone. So thank you.
I did. Yeah, I did notice that actually as I was logging on, which is really cool. I love that when people take tours with us. We do our best to take pictures of clients and each other on these tours, because I just think it's really cool to have pictures of yourself in these amazing spots. And then we upload those and share them with our clients so that they can have pictures of themselves. And I was still getting my teaching legs back on this last tour, so I didn't take as many client shots as I really would have, or wanted to, I should say. But there was a point, where Toby kind of walked out in this field looking at these this dead dog forest, these trees that have no bark. And he was wearing that yellow jacket and asked me to take a shot. And it turned out to just be such a cool picture. I really enjoyed making that one. So thanks for sharing it.
It's cool. Yeah. Sure. Thank you. Thank you for capturing it. Awesome. And David Carr, thanks so much for hanging out with us this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. You can follow David at DavidCarr_photo. That's right. See what he's up to from time to time. And David, you and I will be seeing each other. So we'll have one more show before there's a break again. I'm sorry, but as things start to open back up and travel becomes relatively safe, we will have some breaks in the show as I go back to travel. So that was one thing that was nice about 2020 is we ran this show more uninterrupted weeks in a row.
Right, we did.
Had in years.
We had to do something with ourselves.
Man, during full lockdown, this was my weekly therapy, actually.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to being out there with you, Toby, in Tanzania, and just
should be a good time.
You know what? I'm still like just holding on to hope that it's actually going to happen, because so many things have fallen through. I think it's going to happen. It looks like
I think it is too. I think so. I think we've got this locked in. Yep. Yeah. All right. Chat room, thank you so much for hanging out with us. You make the show better with your fun comments like no flip up flash fail, John, and making sure he's got a watermark on there and all of that. So thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you again next week. Till then, bye-bye.